did not want to raise you. You were taken from me.
Taken? Don't try to blame the one mother I know for you not wanting to take responsibility for your own child.
Look, Bree, I'm not trying to taint your vision of your grandmother, but you 22. I'm finally ready to at least start to mend what's supposed to be a mother-daughter relationship. I get it's late, but I was a confused child. Your grandmother was aggressive. I did as I was told.
Don't look Bree me, thinking I'm supposed to just understand and forgive, Karen. It ain't that sweet.
Just listen for a minute. I was in high school. I had been attracted to women since, I don't know, maybe 4th or 5th grade. I knew what I felt when I saw Whitney Houston or Jasmine Guy on TV. The feeling wasn't that of a regular fan. It was a real attraction. Your grandmother picked up on it just like everything else. I remember watching A Different World, and it was the episode where Jada Pinkett was in a new class. I just had this look on my face like, who the hell is that? In that moment, my mama was watching my face and looked disgusted. Now, I had never actually been with the woman at that point. I didn't know what I was feeling or what I wanted to do, but she clearly did. She was dead set on fixing me. After months of Bible thumping let me know I was going against God and that my feelings were unnatural, constantly dressing me up in pink dresses, Barbie and cheerleading this and that, I began to think I liked men. At freshman year in high school, I was encouraged to have sex with a man. This was to ensure my heterosexuality. Homecoming was coming up. I had to have a date, a male. Tim, your dad, was in the 10th grade and cool. Mama liked him, so it seemed right for me to make him my date. That night, I slept with Tim. It was the worst experience of my life. It was fully consensual sex with words, but my body and my mind was repulsed. I laid there just taking it and thinking this was not what I wanted. A month later, I came out to everyone. I switched up my look to be more comfortable. I quit the cheerleading team and finally began to truly love and learn myself. I was asked to leave the church and choose between my home and my sexuality.
What do you mean choose?
Get out or don't be gay. That was my ultimatum until we found out I was pregnant with you. Mama looked at me with love again. She was excited to not only have a grandchild, but another girl. After you were born, she was able to focus on you and let me live. When I went away to school, I never planned on coming back. I packed my trunk and headed to Florida A&M. Her last words were, I won't mess up with this one.
Well, she did mess up. Last thing I need is a lesbian mama.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Mac back another week with Black Women, Sex, and today is a bit more serious than previous weeks. We're talking about trauma, and that seems like a loaded word, but the goal today is to give us enough insight and enough advice to say, hey, we got it, like every other thing. I mean, we're Black and women, so that's the superpower, right? So this episode is one of my more serious selections. Having the opportunity to work at DePaul University and teach the psychology of trauma, I would be remiss to do a web series that didn't allow us to discuss Black women, sex, and trauma. The intro of the book, the foreword that you guys heard on the first episode, was really the why. The why behind my work and the why behind my writing is the fact that Black women are so underserved, and we've all heard the Malcolm X quote, that we have accepted it in a lot of ways. And once you continue to accept several things, it turns into a fancy word called trauma. A lot of times you hear it now because it's more popular. So in our day-to-day conversations, we say things loosely like triggers and PTSD and mental health, but it's new. And the fact that it's a new resource for Black women has connected us and disconnected us from certain generations who still don't think that mental health is imperative to our survival. We are still the #1 in death for cardiovascular health because we're constantly stressed out. We know what's happening in this country regularly, and from a day-to-day basis, we don't know what triggers we will be exposed to just by turning on the radio or pulling up your Instagram page. There is something that pokes you, and there is no way that we can discuss anything related to sexuality, identity, fluidity, our relationships, our partnerships, without being able to self-assess and see what it is that we need to undo to break down a lot of the barriers that we were born with. And I say born with complete conviction and confidence, because if you are Black and female and you're in this country, and I can probably say around the world, you are traumatized by something. So today's episode is for us to chit chat about how we can work on it. So I wanted to make sure that I brought a guest on the show that I respect in my field and advanced in it, and can really give us some insight into her work and some resources that we can use as it relates to trauma, so we can get over a lot of the barriers and not pass some of the stuff down. So I know that I introduced the episode telling you guys that we were talking about Black women, sex, and trauma. We have a lot of history that makes us unique. One of the craziest questions that I get is, what's the difference in everybody else's sex and Black women's sex? So talked about trauma a little bit and had to bring a specialist on that knows her stuff and works in it, and obviously is Black and female. So wanted to introduce you to my girl Sam. How are you?
I'm good.
Tell the people who you are and what you do.
Samantha Allen. I am a psychotherapist. I am the founder of Foundations Counseling LLC.
Oh, how long you been doing that?
4 years.
Okay, you like it?
I love it.
Oh, love is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
of course, all of the episodes have been about sex.
Okay.
You're aware of my brand and the book and blah, blah, blah. But a lot of times I think that Black women get a bad rap for all the things that we don't do, right? We did the marriage episode and they said that nobody wants to marry us. We're too aggressive. We're too this, we're too that. And it affects us in the bedroom.
Absolutely.
So in your experience, what do you think we go through that may traumatize us, that maybe prevents us from doing some things we want to do sexually?
Well, it can go back as far as childhood. There could be some childhood trauma, sexual trauma. It could even be child abuse. One of the things I talk about with my clients a lot is the fact that when we have a shattered sense of self, we can't perform in almost every arena. So then we're stunted in our growth.
So a shattered sense of self. How do we get that, you think?
That's interesting you ask. I have to teach my clients that. So Eric Erickson has stages of development, and he talks about us successfully passing through those stages to form a pretty strong sense of self. And I often find people are stuck in the shame versus guilt, right?
Okay.
No one taught our parents that we needed to go through those certain stages to develop appropriately. So how we get that is through our parents. When they say, hey, great job, Harita. You're doing a good job. That's right. Keep doing it. That helps us build our sense of self, which is how we see ourselves. And if it's shattered, then how do we see ourselves in the world?
So when we think about abuse, some of our listeners may be thinking, I feel shattered, but I was never raped. I feel shattered, but my parents never hit me, or we grew up wealthy, or I had the best education. Since most of my work is mothers and daughters, specifically Black mothers and daughters, how do you think our moms could shatter our sense of self?
Ooh, that's a very deep one. In some cases, I'll say at my practice, I often see situations where moms were not vocal enough. They didn't give instructions. They didn't teach their women, their daughters, to be women. It was more so what the girls saw or didn't see. And so I think that we can be neglectful and lack the certain parenting needed to help our young women form into womanhood.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's 2020. A lot of things are public knowledge. Our girls are exposed to everything in handheld devices.
Sure.
So you and I may have had different opportunities and different challenges when we were being raised, because we couldn't really fact check our families.
Absolutely.
So what would you say to moms now that maybe they're pregnant, maybe they just had a daughter, maybe they're a toddler? When should they start the development of a sense of self?
For me, it starts when they're in the womb. The connection, for me, I read Bible verses. I played music to my son. I started the nurturing then. And I continued to cultivate the space once he was out, giving him the attention, the nurturing and love and care that he needs. I think women don't do it as much with their girls, and that sometimes could be an issue. But I think it starts when they're in the womb.
So womb trauma is a thing.
Oh, yeah, it really is.
So some of us innately came here with challenges. So how can I cause womb trauma? What could I be going through if life is happening. So for instance, this pandemic, how do I even avoid womb trauma if I'm pregnant in a crisis like this?
Yeah, so womb trauma usually occurs when the mom is stressed.
Okay.
When the mom is carrying out these sort of negative thoughts, these negative feelings, and there's a presence of the negative hormone that can cause the womb trauma. So especially in this pandemic right now, I think it's really important for women to be mindful about their thoughts, their feelings, and what their energy is, because it gets transferred to the baby. So I think maybe doing some healthy coping strategies would really help.
Okay. So healthy coping strategies, any other ideas for moms or new moms? And then we'll get into some of us that are adults and trying to undo some things.
Absolutely. I think the biggest part is education, getting the information. We don't have that information because we really don't know it exists. Surrounding yourself with people that are, how can I say, on a different level than you, or they have what it is that you're trying to acquire.
Okay. I think that's great advice as it relates to mentorship. I always say that mentorship never stops. The minute you don't require a mentor, you decided to stop learning.
Absolutely.
And we know with no change, there's no growth.
Absolutely.
Right? So beyond that, if we know that most of us, because how can we say we're Black, we're female, and we're Americans and not be born traumatized?
That's true.
So it's almost a guarantee across the board, if you will. Would you agree with that? That we come here with something.
Yeah, we're born into it. We're definitely born into it. We have, our parents lived it, their parents lived it. So we're taught that this is how things are for us. And so we're born into it.
So when we bring it back to sexuality, right? And everything connected to sex starting in your mind. If I have no self-awareness or self-love, how do I build it?
So another key thing is no security in yourself, no confidence. I think what happens is naturally we learn what we see other people do and we take that on and we do it.
But we were bringing it back to sex. So how do I get over that hump if all of these things have happened to me? Maybe my mother was the cause, maybe life was the cause, maybe an on-set relationship in grammar school has set me up and now I'm late 20s, early 30s. What are some practices that I need to maybe implement to help me out?
The first thing I'm going to always say is we need to go to counseling. We need to definitely have a counselor and a mentor, because we don't know that it's wrong until we sit down and process it, right? And we realize, wait, this isn't normal.
Right.
So I think that it's important for young people to definitely check in with themselves, and their behaviors. What is this behavior intended for in my life? Why am I doing this? Where's the lack of behaviors? I think it's really important to start with counseling. That way you can have someone guide you through the process of self-discovery and learning new behaviors, positive ones at that.
Okay.
So I think when you address those things, then who you are sexually is going to change definitely. Because we move from doing what society says do. Society says man and woman come together, have sex. Okay.
What are the specifics?
Exactly. Where's the intimacy? Where we taught intimacy, where we taught healthy relationship building. I think it's important for us to step outside of what we've been taught or handed down from our family to really discover what it is that we want to actualize in our life.
Okay. So self-assessment is key.
Exactly.
It's like once you get the opportunity to choose for yourself, maybe it's when you go away to college or you leave out from under your family home, or maybe you detach from a religion, because we know that can be traumatizing as well.
Yeah.
You do some things to kind of figure out what it is you want.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that our first episode was Black women, sex, and masturbation, and how that was a major part of self-discovery and possibly enhancing confidence and alleviating some traumas. So once we get back outside and back with our partners, those of us who don't have people at home, we have a better sense of self in that. So in your opinion, as Black women, how do we traumatize each other?
Clinically, I would say we bring our childhood experiences, the good and the bad, the flaws, the insecurities, and that interfaces with the other woman's issues and insecurities. Instead of us saying, hey, let's empower one another, let's educate one another. Sometimes me and my mentor call it that thing that's uncomfortable right here as a woman, when you're interfaced with another woman and that feeling you get, you have to be emotionally mature enough to check that and say, I feel insecure, I feel jealous or envious. And then you got to get down to the bottom of the why. And if she has something or is doing something you want to do, make sure you get that information so that you can do it and learn how to do it too. It's not necessarily a competition, but if you see something you want and that person has it, brush elbows with that person. Hey, I like this. Can you tell me how to do that?
Right.
But we weren't taught that. We were born almost into conflict, and we weren't really taught the conflict resolution skills that we need, or the self-assessment. We weren't taught that. So I think that's the issue that we have with women. Instead of checking ourselves, we project ourselves.
I like that. Instead of checking ourselves, we project ourselves. But it sounds like we have a choice.
Yep.
Do you feel like in 2020 there are more resources available, so maybe we don't have the same, and I'm going to say excuses loosely, the same challenges or lack of access that maybe our parents didn't have access to, so we should be moving forward?
Sure. I agree. I think we have more resources. I remember in 2009 when the budget cut hit and they were cutting all mental health services. Oh, I was afraid because, of course, now you see we have majority of the homeless population, they are mentally ill without services.
Right.
So in 2020, I will say some of the things that have helped us kind of educate and provide more resources on mental health counseling would be the celebrities. They're speaking out about their issues and their success with therapy. I think that we have a younger generation that's just more open to information and open to doing things differently. You know, back in the day, our parents were like, therapy? You don't need
Why
therapy.
would you do that?
You just need to go to church. You need to pray about it.
Go to sleep, take a nap.
God created therapists.
Drink water.
Right. So go, just like if you're ailing in your body, you go see a doctor. If you're ailing in your mind and you're struggling, you should go see a therapist.
So therapy is prevention.
It is.
How soon, if we're thinking prevention, we're thinking, you know, you have an optometrist, you have a dentist, you have your primary care physician. Those are people that are in your arsenal, right? Your medical team. So a lot of us, we don't include a counselor in our medical team. So how soon do you think counseling should start to not be reactionary?
I think that in order to be preventative, we have to be observant.
Okay.
So what I know is in the schools, you have the social workers and the teachers, and even in the pediatrician's office, they do the developmental screenings and they ask the questions. If you sense that something's off, then you want to reach out to that that mental health professional to get some assistance. As a mom myself, I am always observing. I'm always making sure that my children hit the developmental milestones. And if they have some behaviors that are present, I think it's important for us to remember that behaviors are like symptoms. Just like when we get a cold, we get a runny nose, a fever, a headache. Those are symptoms. Behaviors are symptoms of some underlying issues as well. So when you see some behaviors and they're not changing with what you're reinforcing at home, then we might need to reach out and get some help. In terms of adults, if you're having these, what I call distorted thoughts, reoccurring, we definitely want to sit down with somebody. They do the assessment when we go to get our checkup too. They ask you I think it's a depression screen.
It is a depression screening.
If you're having some feelings when you're answering it, you feel like you can't be honest or you're feeling ashamed or inquisitive, I think you should get help. And that's just as easy as asking your PCP, hey, do you have a referral for me to see a counselor? Or I'm really having these thoughts. What would you recommend? It starts there. Or I'm a Google queen. You can go to Google and type in a symptom and look to see if it's normal or what have you. And if you feel like it's not, I'm going to tell you, an initial assessment with a therapist or a counselor would definitely be helpful.
I think that is sometimes what we fear when we hear primary care physician and we hear referrals. We're automatically assuming that we have to have the best of insurance, right? So we know a lot of our counterparts are in a different socioeconomic level. And when you think about therapy, you think that this is a luxury item. This is something in addition that regular people or lower middle class or even middle class people, they don't add that because they can't afford it. Do you know of any resources that we can tell our audience that they can dive into? Because I'm glad that you mentioned Google, but we know sometimes you get to Google and then you self-diagnose and then you figure out your own prescription.
Exactly.
So we don't want to advocate for that. But what would you say to one of our listeners that knows, but in their mind it's thousands upon thousands of dollars?
Yeah. Well, I will say when you Google, you tend to see prices, right? And that helped me when it came to making my website. So What I would look for is affordable.
Okay.
Right? You want to Google affordable counseling, affordable mental health services. There are also, if for every organization, we pretty much have a sliding fee scale.
Okay.
And every organization offers pro bono. So if you're curious and you want some help, you definitely want to ask the questions. How much are the sessions? Do you accept my insurance? What is the roundabout cost for this for me to reach a certain level of healing? You know, and then you also want to say, hey, do you have pro bono services? I really don't have, the funds to afford this.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good, because sometimes we get in our own heads and just assume and may not have had a clue that they offer pro bono services, and you just may be the client that they want to assist with their growth and development. So when we think about trauma and how it affects our communication, if I haven't self-assessed, if I know that I have childhood trauma that has given me body image issues, and that's just to start the list, and I come into contact with a partner that seems to understand my challenges, seems to be someone who's really to work with me while I work on my growth and development, how, if I'm the counterpart and I know that I'm dating someone with these challenges, how do I work on my patience or my level of communication if I'm dating a Black woman who I know is coming to the table with some of these traumas? What are some things that I can do if I'm the other partner?
The first thing I would say is to check myself and make sure I don't have my own issues.
Because we could trigger each other.
Exactly. And when you know what your issues are, then you can get to a solution. So when you check yourself, then it'll be easier for you to offer compassion and understanding and then have patience. But when you come into it with your own load, it can present with some difficulties.
And then we kind of just keep switching baggage back and forth.
Absolutely. I think that to have a playing ground of compassion and understanding that, hey, we have these issues. This is my issue. We have to offer compassion to each other. And it's not always perfect. But whenever the issues present itself, take like a self time out, and regroup and take the time to regroup by processing what just happened. Why did it happen? How is this making me feel? And what can I do in this situation to make it better? And I think that has to happen with both parties.
Absolutely, and I think that that's how we connect the dots back to the original question about womb trauma. If we are with our partners and we decide that we're going to reproduce, but we're arguing and we're going back and forth and cursing and hollering and screaming, this is transferring over and we're redeveloping another person that has to repeat possibly our cycle, right? Which is the premise across the board of all of my work. How do we break the cycle when we assume that there are no resources in this arena that can help us get over the hump? But I think that all of your tips have been really, really helpful. Your insight has been imperative to the point that we were trying to make with this particular web series. So we really can't even get into anything related to sexology and positioning and things that you want to do if you haven't self-assessed why it is you can't even say certain words.
Well, we do now. We do. We typically do what we saw or what we think we're supposed to be doing, which can or cannot make for a good sexual experience. But when you do have your time to self-assess, self-discover, and improve self, I'm pretty sure you'll turn out to be a better person in that bedroom.
Well, there you go. That is what you're Googling. You're putting in the search engine self-assess. What else am I Googling? Self-discovery and affordable mental health counseling. So you have your phone in your hand, I'm positive. And if you know that we're talking about you, make sure that you Google those things. And I'm confident that once we go into the comments of this episode, Sam is going to pop up and give you some additional resources. And probably everybody that's watching that is in clinical, that knows about a lot of different resources here and abroad, post them now just so we can tap into what it is that we know that we need. But Sam, that was dope.
Yeah,
that was dope.
I had
it was
a great
just
time.
one of those things that, we had to shake it off
Good conversation.
and not trigger each other.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, thank you so much again for coming out. Absolutely. So good talk, right? Seems like it was a little bit rough, but it's a talk that was necessary. It absolutely represents our resilience as women of color. But my thing is, if I have to say how I want to wrap everything up, is I'm traumatized. You're traumatized. Sam is traumatized. The director, the black female behind the camera, she's traumatized. The lady that produces it and tells me what to do, she's traumatized. Black, female, American, there's something that you're going through that you now self-assess and you have the resources to overcome. What I do know is the ancestors and matriarchs in our families who blessed us enough to let their blood run through us got us together. So there's really nothing that we can't overcome because we were built into survival mode. This trauma thing, this mental health thing, this putting you at the top of your list thing is imperative for that survival. It's about making sure that you self-assess and do the work and do the self-care required to be the best you can be. But what I can say, my other thing is making sure we're accountable for one another. Only another black woman knows your story and can assist you with maybe not repeating some of the things that they went through. So if you see someone, just like if I see someone that could be my niece, my baby cousin, or my little sister, and she's walking into an experience that I've survived, she doesn't have to survive it too. I can help her prevent it by telling her my story. And when you see me and I look like your niece or your daughter or your cousin, do the same thing. Had the pleasure of getting a pedicure at a black-owned salon here in Chicago, and I would say that one of my elders was doing my feet. She massaged up my calf and noticed what could have been or what she thought may have been a blood clot. Immediately, she took it upon herself to tell me her story about blood clots and give me advice on what I should do if it is one. She immediately went into protection mode as if she gave birth to me herself. That's our superpower. That's what makes us resilient. And that's what makes us overcome any and everything. So this trauma piece, we got it. Do your work and put yourself at the top of the priority list. That's the thing. See you guys next week.